What is the DNA, really?
Well, I don't think anyone really, quote, knows what the DNA is. We all got theories and speculations about it. I think probably the mystics come closer than anyone to understanding the DNA because they've learned to turn inward into their through their genetic coding into their DNA, reportedly. So my experience and my studies say to me that the DNA is this double helix spiral, which all helixes are capable of storing much more energy and information, are antennas. Every DNA strand, every double helix in every cell, and I think there's 6.5 million miles altogether if you lay them end to end. There's about 3 meters of DNA per strand, 2 strands, that's, if I remember right, 6 meters of DNA in every cell. There's about 55 to 100 trillion cells in the human body. That's a lot of DNA. And because it's a double helix spiral, it has the capacity of storing immense amounts of energy. And we have the potential capacity of literally expanding the DNA into probably the same number of dimensions as the universe that the quantum theorists are saying is up to 13 dimensions in this particular space-time continuum that we're able to experience through the third dimension into the fourth dimension and from the fourth dimension into the multi-dimensional universes. One theory is that if there are 13 dimensions, 8 of them are outfolded, and by the way, this is happening in the DNA. 8 of them are outfolded, and 5 of them are still infolded, like the bud of a rose that hasn't opened up and gone out yet. So they're like most of the petals, 8 out of 13 are out, and 5 are still enclosed. So supposedly we potentially have a strand of DNA for each one of those dimensions. Now, to return to what is the DNA. For me, the DNA is an antenna, a crystalline antenna, because it has the asymmetrical hexagonal shape of a quartz crystal, for example, 6-sided, 6 facets, just like a quartz crystal. And like the quartz crystal, which can receive and store frequencies, therefore information, the DNA receives cosmic rays, cosmic frequencies, cosmic vibrations from every dimension you can imagine of the 13 dimensions. And as it receives all these frequencies and vibrations, it stores them in the lattice work of its double helix, which may be represented as 2 serpents winding around each other in figure 8 infinity shapes at each dimension, so that all 7 chakra areas meet at each intersection, which would be the center of the figure 8. So actually what you have is 2 fields of energy double spiraling, probably one up and one down, moving counter to each other, counterclockwise. One going up, meeting one coming down. The yang going up, the yin coming down, if there's harmony present in the body, in the mind, and in the DNA. Because there's all varieties of possibility. There's many varieties of possibilities as there are vibrations and frequencies in the 13-dimensional universe. And the DNA has the capacity to receive every one of those frequencies and vibrations, probably, theoretically at least. So if this is true, then we're receiving constantly in the present all this cosmic information, which is being stored in our DNA. All this information together is the Akashic record. The collective of all of this information is the Akashic record, the one unified field of consciousness available to every individual human being. The whole consciousness of the whole humankind, of all humankind, all fully self-realized if we simply plug into this, what I'm saying, consciously. Because this energy and information is available to us consciously to work with, to co-create with, and to use to transform our environment and the problems that we face now, which are critical to the point of the tipping point. To me, this means we must transform our DNA into a more multi-stranded double helix, so that ultimately there are 13 strands, 6 per yang, 6 per yin, with a central strand running right through the center, which is the primary generating middle path of most mystical systems. So the DNA is a receiver of information and a store of information in the present. However, it's also the store of the information and the memory of all the generations of your genetic family, all the way back to the originating godfather, godmother that created the Adam and Eve of your tree of life, so to speak. So your whole line of genetics, all the way back to the original generation of you, the individual, in this moment, is also, the memory of all that experience is also stored in the DNA, I think. This is my intuition, and this is its purpose. Now, they say so far that only 3% of DNA is active. This is what the scientists say now, and the rest is what they call junk DNA. That means 97% of the DNA is what they call junk DNA. Well, that's like saying the universe is now 80% dark matter, or whatever the percentage is. It's the same consciousness. In other words, that just means they don't know. They don't know about these other dimensions of energy that are available because knowledge cannot apprehend them. Only experience can experience them and understand them in consciousness without the need to put them in symbols, pictures, language, images, sculpture, architecture, or any form of culture. We can experience all this in full consciousness by putting the mind in service to this process that I'm referring to, that's coming now to every child, woman, and man on the planet with this shift from 2012 to 2013. From the old paradigm of the Aryan patriarchal consciousness, where the white male has dominated the planet for the last 5,000 years or more, and built empires and pyramids wherever he's gone, and bankrupt and fouled every place he's passed through. We now have 5,000 years of experience as human beings that this is probably not wisdom. This is probably not wise, and probably not good living to foul your own house, your own home, your own spaceship, because it's the only one we got right now. So by choosing to get into my DNA,
Yes.
with consciousness, all right, there's two sources of information about this that are very powerful if you understand the metaphors, both Buddha and Jesus Christ. Buddha said in order to experience moksha, what he meant by freedom, alive freedom in the human body now, we must take the sword, find the root, cut the root, and then sterilize each and every seed in the fire. In 3 of the Gospels, Jesus Christ said, I have a baptism of fire. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. In every family of 5, I've come to set 3 against 2. I've come to set son against father. I've come to set daughter against mother. Son-in-law against father-in-law, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. So you see, they're both using the same symbols, the same information to give us the same experience that they both had, and put them in those individual metaphors so that we'd understand that this experience is available to every human being. It will simply follow the guidance of the Buddha Christs, which is basically to turn inward with the discerning mind. That's the sword. The two-edged sword of the mind that cuts a wide swath both to the right and to the left from the center point. And so when we leave the 2 hemispheres of the brain and go into what's that called, the corpus callosum, that braided bran between the 2 hemispheres,
Yes.
and center, right in the center of that, and use the imagery of the sword going down into our body, into every cell of our body, and seeing the root, the genetic root that binds us, that puts us in literal energetic bondage to the past through mother and clan and love of nation and religion and all of that. Any form of attachment to the past that's encoded in the DNA. We must use the discerning clarity of the discerning centered mind, take it inside into the body, into the center, and then from the center into every cell of the body in full consciousness. Find the genetic root that through the DNA that binds us to the past through mother, incestuous bondage to mother and clan. cut that root in the DNA, metaphorically and imaginally speaking, and then find each and every seed of that tree and sterilize it in the fire. Now this requires a lot of energy, a lot of work, a lot of concentration, a lot of self-discipline, and it's almost impossible for most human beings. That's why there are very few Buddha Christs. However, with this shift in consciousness, with the death of the old paradigm in the Aryan patriarchy, the opportunity is now here in this new consciousness for every individual to co-create through creative imagination what he or she chooses as heaven on earth. We can be free now. But every individual human being, through regenerating a new DNA structure, by basically imagining it now, once we've destroyed the root, the old structure, the double-strand DNA,
The old myth.
the old myths, the old symbols, everything that keeps us in genetic bondage to the past. Because as long as we're bound to the past, we cannot be free in the living moment. Because the past will always be brought forth through the mind, through the memory banks of the mind and language, and contaminate the present moment with the past, which is dead. The past is dead and buried. Detach from it. Let it go. It's like a loved one that's gone. Celebrate the energy released and the return to the center. And then bring yourself into the now and here. Take your discerning mind through the meditative practices and breath work that's available to everyone. Turn inward. Get into your DNA coding. This is what the shaman do with their ayahuasca and psychedelic experiences. They go into their own DNA. That's why there's almost always two particular serpents in every, almost all art of the peyote and ayahuasca experience, because the shaman have gone into their own DNA structures, are now working at that level, which is the beginning probably of material consciousness and material expression. So we have the opportunity for the Buddha Christ consciousnesses of following their example, of taking the mind itself, but the holistic mind, the centered mind, the discerning mind, and turning it inward into our own genetic coding and into our own DNA structures. And through creative imagination, cut those bonds with the sword of the discerning mind that bind us to the past. And then through the creative imagination, imagine the images, the experiences, the expressions, and the lifestyles that we choose individually to now replace the old and bring heaven to earth embodied in every individual human being, and then expressed honestly and clearly out of that experience in the moment. And once we recognize that we all share this experience in our own unique way, then communities, small communities of people, will form, and a sangha, a spiritual community, will take place. And before you know it, around the whole earth, we have a grassroots, whole earth, cultural renaissance, new birth. And at that moment, peace becomes an existential, experiential reality for every child, woman, man, and elder, and every being, creature, and thing on the whole earth. This is possible. Not only is it possible, it's highly probable. And we begin with our next breath and the one in our body now. We begin transforming our DNA with our next breath and the one in our body now. Now, do I believe this? No. No, I don't believe it. I don't have any abstract delusional belief system about this. I'm expressing my experience, my understanding from my experience, and the wisdom of that I'm carrying forth with me into this present. And I'm also expressing my research and studies about these experiences and this information that I'm sharing with you. Do I feel and think that this is possible? Yes. Is it probable? Yes. Is it available for everyone? Yes. When may we start? With our next breath and the one in our bodies now. Does this come close to answering your question, what is DNA?
Yes, yes, yes.
Let's close now for a moment at least. Let's apply prudence. And amigos, if you're listening to this, we shall return. Thank you for listening. Thank you for considering this information. If any of it resonates with you, please receive it, integrate it, and use it to transform your life and your lifestyle.
Thank you.
Aloha.